So I'm going to play Bernadette reading Chocolate Poetry Sonnet, and then we'll talk about it. Here we go.
Poem that I was telling you about. It's called Chocolate Poetry.
I'm going to start.
So I found this poem that I was telling you about. It's called Chocolate Poetry Sonnet. When my children were growing up, we never had candy at home, but when we went to poetry readings, I always brought them chocolate bars to make the poetry palatable or more interesting, or so they'd be relatively quiet. It only backfired if the reading lasted too long. Then there was hell to pay, but I deserved it, didn't I? After a while, if I knew the reading would be long, I'd bring 2 chocolate bars. So I began to think of long readings as 2 chocolate bar readings. Eventually, I'd bring 2 just in case, sometimes saving 1 for the next occasion. Poetry is as good as chocolate. Chocolate as good as poetry is.
She always laughs at her own poems. Oh, Bernadette. Okay, Anna, quickly. Anna, Davy, Lily, Amber Rose, Jason, and Gabe.
I love that poem so much.
What do you love about it?
Well, I love it because of what it says, but I love it even more because it makes me think of my mom. And it makes me think of the moms who have had to, who can't just like get a sitter whenever they want to go to a reading, or, your kid's sick and you just have to just fly with it and deal with it. The number of times that my mom mostly raised us by herself, and the number of times that, if it was like a random day off of school, it was like, okay, we're going to work with mom. We're going to the office with mom, or we always went to the grocery store with her. We always went and did that stuff. And when I think of how much it must have taken for Bernadette to be able to just have that, to share that part of her life with her kids, I want to go to this reading, so you're coming with me, is a beautiful, beautiful thing. But also I think about how much of her social life and her independence my mom had to give up just by the nature of having young kids who needed to go everywhere. And I think of all those things, the chocolate bars, the coloring books, the the ways that we would set ourselves up in the conference room at her office to keep us out of the way for the day. This is a poem about care. It's a poem about responsibility. It's a poem about poetry being a space that maybe is not always welcoming to kids, right? There's that line about, if they get restless, it's, there's the naughty kids, well, she should have gotten a sitter, so they shouldn't be here. It's a poem about, making space and holding space and whatever it takes to get you there to that reading.
I love the way she leaves, in the context of what you just so movingly said, and I love the way she leaves it open as to whose hell is getting paid. In other words, there's hell to pay, but it's not her for being a failed mom, even though that's what everybody thinks.
No, she's being an amazing mom.
It's like the fucking poetry community that can't handle these 3 kids who, if it's a long reading, they're going to get obstreperous. It's going to happen, you know? Don't give a long reading then. Don't be so kid non-friendly, etc. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go to Davy, then Lily. Quick thought, Davy.
I just want to say thanks to Anna. That was amazing. That's it.
Here's to the moms.
When we,
and the
a few years ago, Anna
caretakers.
and Lily and I and some others in Writers House Fellows, we read everything. We read all, and her kids are in so much of the work, and that's another kind of a bold thing to do, right? Get your kids in. Don't just bring your kids to work. Put them in the work.
Yeah.
Kids are part of the work. Thank you, Davy. Lily?
Thinking about how and why this poem fits in the New York School Week, besides the fact that Bernadette Mayer was a figure in that scene, I really liked the line when she says, I started to think of long readings as 2 chocolate bar readings. And I think a lot of what we've talked about today, whether it was with Skylar or with O'Hara, is about the urban quality of the work, is more about cities being this imposition on the environment, on people's bodies, on capital. and you just have to find your own subjective way and time through that space, whatever that means for you, whether it's looking out your window at sunset every day, or whether it's timing your day based on when your kids are going to sleep, like an Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or whether it's like on your lunch break, as with O'Hara, or with Bernadette Mayer, whether it's like I'm the time I'm pacing out for myself, kind of in opposition to, but also along with the city, is chocolate bar time.
That's beautiful. Bernadette would be very happy and embarrassed by all the serious, moving talk about a poem she thinks of as a silly poem. She knows better. Amber Rose, your thought on this poem?
Yeah, I also love this poem, and it makes me think of myself. Because I'm a snacker. People know me as a snacker. There's not a single class that I've ever been in where I haven't had snacks. I'm always eating during these webcasts. I'm like always, I'm always munching. I know, but that's the great thing. So today I wasn't, because I was running late, right? And I was actually thinking like, damn, I'm not about to have no snacks. I'm going to be dying. But then I came in and this tea, Davey made me a cup of tea and it was here waiting for me before I even arrived. And now, even though I don't have snacks, I have this warm thing that I'm able to drink. And it's that kind of care. Like Davey showed me that same kind of care that Bernadette is talking about.
And the mug says professional. Professional friend.
Yes, a professional
Davey
friend.
Niddle,
Davey
professional
Niddle.
friend.
But we're always like, oh, do you want some snack? I'm like asking you if you want crackers or whatever. But the other thing that I like about this is that it reminds us that we're in our bodies. When we're talking about poetry, when we're listening to long readings, our bodies aren't absented from what's going on. And the snacks or the drink or the tea or whatever is like our body being present. And that's such an important reminder coming out of thinking about Schuler and like how we engage with poetry, what our bodies are doing. It's important to think about.
Wow, we're really rocking this. Jason, rock on.
His name's Skylar.
Okay. I love this poem too, and I think that it reminds us of the importance and the emergence of women in the second generation, and reminds me, it actually reminded me of the way in which this community, it's in past tense. The other poems that we've read have been in present tense. And so it's a looking back, and it's probably a looking back after her children are a little older. But the fact that there would even be children at a poetry reading changes the dynamic of the poetry reading entirely. And I think, and I like that poetry is the last two lines. I like, it's not like poetry is as good as like a nutritious, like veggie shake. It's saying that poetry is good as chocolate, and they're both like events that happen in the mouth.
They really do.
Yeah.
Jason, stop doing this to us. You do this to us. You slay us. Thank you. That was beautiful. And now we turn to Amaris for a thought on the chocolate poetry sonnet. Amaris? Okay, I think her connection is not working so well. So we're going to go to Gabe for a thought on this. Gabe?
Yeah, so I share Anna's single mom feels. Though what I want to mention is, this is a really real scene. You go to a lot of poetry readings, you will see kind of this happening. Maybe not with chocolate bars, but that kind of management of the attention of the kid, or the management of the like noise of the kid. You'll constantly see parents like walking in or walking out or dealing with this, and it's really I think it's a lovely thing to see. I mean, I think if anybody's annoyed by it, they're being really foolish. But it's a lovely thing to see. I've seen poetry readings with poets like holding a kid in one hand and like a manuscript in the other. So this is just a real thing that happens in our like economy of being together. But I think what's interesting about this poem is the way in which like Bernadette and the kids are having to like come to some consensus about how the next like, let's say, hour will be spent. And that's where that equivalence at the end comes, where like chocolate is as good as poetry. Poetry is as good as chocolate is, like, in the sense that Bernadette can take up or occupy that amount of time with poetry. The kids maybe don't as much, so they have chocolate, and chocolate does that same, just occupying the time.
Yeah, also there's another reading of As Good As. I like your reading, Gabe, but another one is poetry is only as good as chocolate, meaning it is equal to, as good as. It is a transitive principle. Poetry is as good as chocolate, chocolate's as good as poetry, but really poetry is only as good as chocolate, the chocolate you happen to have.